All right, I will get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ali Saberman. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the Vice President of Operations. Going to quickly go over our agenda for this meeting. If you haven't already registered as a member, the ability to do that is now closed. If you are unsure of your membership status, you can check that on our website. So just a little bit about how tonight is going to work. We have 4 wonderful candidates. We will first hear 1-minute introductions from each candidate, and then we will have a total of 6 questions that our moderator will be asking our candidates with 1-minute answers from each candidate. Then we will have the ability for a few attendee questions with 1-minute answers from each candidate. And in closing, our candidates will have 1 minute. We expect that we will finish the debate portion of the forum around 8 p.m. In our voting, we expect it will be between 8 and 8:30 p.m. And with that, I will happily introduce our moderator for tonight. So our moderator for tonight is Diana Zamora-Marquin. Diana Zamora-Marquin serves as the Director of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood Marmonte. Her career, which spans 2 decades, has focused on equity, civic engagement, and public policy, leading her to develop and oversee sophisticated political program for a local labor council, work for a renewed research firm in San Diego, and live in Washington, D.C., working for 2 California congressmen. Diana serves on numerous boards that focus on diversity, equity, healthcare, and women's rights. Diana earned a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of Southern California and a master's degree in global leadership with a certification in project management from the University of San Diego. So I will now happily pass it over to Diana. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It will be an exciting one.
Thank you, Ellie. I appreciate the introduction. And again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are looking forward to the hour that we are going to be spending together. As Ali mentioned, we will be starting with an opening from each of our candidates, going into 6 prepared questions, and then based on time, we will be able to accommodate a couple of attendee questions as well. So just something to keep in mind as we go through this forum. We will also be asking candidates to please limit their answers to 1 minute. Ali will be keeping time, so please take a look for them as they signal that your time is up, and please be respectful of that time so that we make sure that all the candidates have equal airtime. So to begin, I will go through and just introduce each candidate, and then that candidate will have 1 minute to do an opening statement, and we'll go on from there. I will also ask that everyone ensure that they are muted, just so that we can really focus on the task at hand today. And with that, we'll get started. So first, I would like to introduce, we have Santa Clara County Supervisor Cindy Chavez. Supervisor, if you would like to take a minute to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting tonight's forum. When I was growing up, my father was a carpenter and my mother a teacher's aide. They were great role models, and their values have shaped my life. Our home was a place in the neighborhood where kids could come after school and everybody knew they were welcomed. And when someone needed support, my parents were there to help. And I have many examples. I'll just share 2. My parents took in 3 small children when a neighbor was diagnosed with cancer and they had to travel for an experimental treatment. And over the years, we took in several other families to help them save money for their own place. By watching my parents, I learned that being a part of a community meant doing my part to make it better. I've run a nonprofit, led the labor movement, served our community on the city council and as a county supervisor. I'm running for mayor because I've demonstrated that genuine leadership can change lives.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? We need to get a spotlight on whoever is speaking so that the speaker can be seen by the audience. Thank you.
Can everyone please make sure that they are muted? And then I think Allie, when you're able to do the spotlight, can you just give me a thumbs up so we can move on to the next candidate? Great. All right, thank you so much. Up next, we have San Jose City Council member Raul Peralez.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much for having me tonight. My name is Raul Peralez, and I am running for mayor because I care deeply about our city. This is a city that I have called home my entire life, where I am raising my family as well with my wife, Victoria, and our 3.5-year-old son, and potentially any moment here, my wife is due with our daughter. And so hopefully the water doesn't break tonight during the meeting. But I am running because I want to help make this a better city for all of us, to be able to take on head on the challenges that we're facing here in the city with homelessness, with public safety, and being able to manage the growth that we've seen, the tremendous growth that we've seen over the years. I have been a lifelong Democrat. I'm proud to have the early endorsement of Silicon Valley Young Democrats, and I would be honored to have and earn your endorsement tonight.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Next up, we have San Jose City Council Member Matt Mahan.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, and congratulations, Raul. That's exciting. I'm Matt Mahan, the City Council member for District 10, which, sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. District 10 in South San Jose, where my wife Sylvia and I are raising our 2 children, Nina and Luke. And I'm running for mayor because I'm concerned about the direction our city is heading in. We have a number of challenges that have grown worse in recent years, from homelessness and housing affordability to trash and the state of our infrastructure. And as someone who's been a public school teacher in our community, as well as an entrepreneur, having built successful software companies, I think I bring a different perspective to what it will take to get our city going in a better direction. I know we need to focus, be more innovative, and ultimately be accountable for results. And that's the mindset I'm bringing to City Hall. And I think we have a real opportunity to do better if we expect more from our local public institutions. Thanks again for having me this evening.
Thank you. And wrapping up here with the introductions, we have Jonathan Estaban.
Thank you so much for having me. Hope everyone is having a great evening. Appreciate your time. My name is Jonathan Estaban, and I'm proud to say that I'm the only working class candidate for Mayor of San Jose this year. I am a proud people leader at the Tesla factory just north of San Jose, of which I've worked with a team that has grown in size. We built out very impressive and sustainable processes. But we've also created a work environment that is built with respect and inclusiveness. And that's something that's very important to me. In addition to that, I think we look at why we all run for office, and it's because we want a better San Jose. We want a better city. I have family that have lived here their whole lives. I came here for opportunity. And I believe we have to embody that same opportunity that people want to see when they move here by making sure that San Jose is the best place to live, work, start a business, and to raise a family.
Thank you so much for that. So as you saw during the introductions, we had a timer on. The timer was to give you an idea of what a minute feels like. So we're going to take the timer off for the rest of the questions so that folks can focus on you and really see you. So please be cognizant of the time. As I mentioned, Allie will still be doing time. So when you see a hand raise or a motion going and it's Allie, that is an indicator that your time is up. So we are now going to start into our 6 prepared questions. These questions will be asked of everyone. You will all have an opportunity to answer them. And we will be going through sort of a rotating so that the first person isn't always the one who's starting. The way I did it, just for the sake of fairness and randomness, was based on how your pictures came up when I popped into Zoom. So that is how we are starting it. So for this first question, it will be Councilmember Mahar and Councilmember Peralez, Jonathan, and then Supervisor Chavez. I will go through and let you know who the next person is. You don't need to commit that part to memory. I'll take care of that for you. This first question centers around, actually, before I start, are there any questions from our candidates on the format? All right. This first question centers around police reform. It is a 2-part question. Part 1 is, do you think the San Diego, I'm sorry, I'm a San Diegan, so that just came out by nature. Do you think that the San Jose Police Department is in need of reform? Yes or no? And if you answered yes, what specific reforms are necessary and what 3 concrete steps will you take in your first 100 days as mayor to implement them? Councilmember Mahar, you're up.
In just 60 seconds. Okay.
Just 60 seconds.
I think there is always room for improvement. And I think we very clearly saw that in the response to the protests after the murder of George Floyd. I think the single most important thing we can do is increase community engagement. I also think that oversight from our independent police auditor is critical. And I have supported the expansion of the powers of the IPA in San Jose. And then I think third, to be innovative, I think we can better use technology to identify officers who are outliers in terms of their policing practices and use of force to intervene earlier and get them the coaching and training that they need. But bottom line is, we can't have a public bureaucracy that protects bad actors and erodes public trust. We need to ensure adequate oversight, transparency, and accountability to build trust with the public. I think I'm probably close to 60 seconds, but I'd be happy to keep going if I'm not. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Up next for the same question is Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. And in fact, I think that is the case all the time, where there is a need to be able to look at how you can continually improve in any department. I also believe that we would need to expand our oversight. We have had a tremendous model, but unfortunately it is a rather outdated model of auditing and oversight, and we need to be able to expand on that. Secondly, we need to bring back community policing. It was something that we lost over a decade ago through the Great Recession and Measure B battles here at the city of San Jose, something that was an impetus for me to get involved within the city council. And thirdly, we need to continue to improve on our training for police officers. Unfortunately, we really have focused on narrow areas, and we need to be able to expand on those areas. I know that firsthand, serving in the police department for 8 years, and then serving now as a reserve police officer, where we lack within our training. And it's not just in San Jose, it is statewide.
Thank you. Jonathan, you are up next.
Thank you for that question. And still in the wake of George Floyd crime, I think we definitely need to continue to invest in a better police department, one that's centered in accountability, but also ensuring that our police officers are well equipped to do their job and to provide a public service, to bring public safety to our community. I think the 3 concrete ways that we can do that is, 1, we have to staff our police department. We're inadequately staffed. We can't respond to emergencies quickly enough, and that's simply unacceptable. So we need to start recruiting, and I'd like us to encourage those from a social service background to sign up to become a police officer. We've been recruiting a lot from the military. I think we need to look at social backgrounds. 2, we need to build our community volunteer forces. We need more people unarmed to join our police department and to serve the communities working in those patrols. And 3rd, training. As outlined by the other candidates, we need adequate training. We need de-escalation training, cultural sensitivity training, also awareness of how to deal with people who have mental illnesses as well. I think that's very important.
Thank you so much. And Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. You know, I actually was on a ride along last night with our MCAT team and our San Jose Police Department. And one of the things I would say is that we need to make sure that we have the right people responding to the right kind of crisis. I think that would help our police department and really help us build relationships with the community. 2nd, I think training is really critical. 3rd, I think hiring the best and the brightest. And I do want to remind folks that when Measure B passed in our community, we've lost so many great officers. We became the place that people came to get trained and then to go other places. So making sure that we're hiring the best and the brightest, that we're retaining the best and the brightest, and that we're working closely with them to make improvements. And I think every department needs to improve. And I think we can't be afraid to make sure that we're being critical. And what I mean by that is looking at the work that we're doing and trying to get better all the time. And that's how you build trust in the community.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. We are now moving on to question number 2. I will ask candidates to just pause a couple seconds before they begin to answer to give our team the opportunity to find you and spotlight you. So question number 2 is regarding climate change. What are 3 specific things you will do as mayor to address climate change? And up first, answering that question is Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you. It's truly an important question. Number 1, I would want to undo some of the exemptions that we saw come across the city council with the usage of fossil fuel and fossil fuel industry materials. We have really been progressing over the years, but unfortunately we have found some industry leaders looking for exemptions as we put in progressive policies here in the city of San Jose. Secondly, I would continue down the progress that we have made on really being a leader in implementing these policies like we did when we eliminated the inclusion of gas and natural gas in new development, residential and commercial here in the city of San Jose. And third, we need to get people out of single occupancy vehicles. We need to continue to invest in multimodal transportation options, getting people into and onto our trails and our bike lanes, walking, making more pedestrian friendly environments, and giving people other options so that they can get out of what is the biggest polluter, which are vehicles.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, you are up next.
Thank you for that question. It's very important to me that we pass at the city level Green New Deal. We hear it at a national level, we hear it at a state level, but it's about time that the city of San Jose kind of embodies its progressive roots, right? And I think it's so important that we build out our energy infrastructure. And we do that, 1, we're looking to quickly convert our city fleets and vehicles to EV, as well as to build out EV charging stations. Because without that infrastructure, the EV vehicles are going to be useless to us. And third, I believe it's going to be very important for us to also look to convert our city properties to solar energy as quickly as possible. In addition, of course, to the many things that we need to do, residential solar, and also pushing up our mandate to 2030. We have to be very aggressive with our approach because this is a very urgent situation and we need to look to meet these goals by 2030. It's very ambitious, but we need to do it. And that's the only way we can make things happen is by dreaming big and shooting big.
Thank you, Jonathan. Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you for the question. You know, one of the opportunities that we have as a city is both as new buildings come online to have the kind of building codes that really do get us to a greener future. And as you probably know, buildings are our built environment is a really significant impact on the overall, on our overall climate. Second is that we need to recognize that we have a lot of old houses and a lot of old buildings in our city. And there are really incredible organizations coming online that are supportive of retrofitting our current buildings, and we need to do that aggressively. The other thing I would just add is that we have to recognize that the wildfires have really taken over and impacted our air quality. In fact, the work that we've done to improve our air quality over the last 10 years has almost been wiped out by one terrible fire season. So really focusing on fire suppression is going to be a big part of how we protect the environment long term.
Thank you, Supervisor. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you for the question. Prior to joining City Council, I served on the city's Clean Energy Commission for a couple of years. And the single biggest leverage point we have for addressing climate at the city level is our land use policies. And I've been a leader for advocating for building denser housing and bringing jobs to our urban core, urban villages along our major transit corridors. We have to marry investment in jobs and housing with investment in transit infrastructure. It's the single most important thing we can do. We can also leverage the purchasing power we have at San Jose Clean Energy to make strategic investments, not just in renewables, but in the long-term, more innovative storage solutions that will allow us to scale renewables beyond the point that most cities and states have been able to. And then finally, just at a very local neighborhood level, and this is a resiliency and adaptation issue as well, we have a declining tree canopy in San Jose, and it particularly affects our lower income neighborhoods on the east side. And I want to see the city make an investment in expanding that tree canopy to avoid the heat island effect and clean our air and water for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next question centers around gender equity. What are 3 actions you will take as mayor to increase the supply of housing and expand the safety net for intimate partner violence victims and their children? Up first is Jonathan.
Thank you for that question. So in regards to gender equality and what we can do for those in that community affected by the challenges in the current climate, in regards to housing, I think it's very important that we, 1, build more housing. We need more housing in general. And then 2, I think it's very important that we offer more of these folks the resources to be able to get into housing to escape kind of the perils of gender inequality that they experience. So I think that's very important that we do that. And also, in addition to that, I think we start at the level of school. We need to really have a more progressive sense of teaching people about gender equality. When you introduce yourself, it's not just your name, it should also be your pronoun as well. Making sure that people are sensitive to that, building that respect in school, starting them young, I think that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez?
Thank you. Let me start by talking a little bit about what we're doing right now. Because of feedback that we got, actually, including from your club, we took a look at the work that we were doing to provide housing for victims of domestic violence. That caused Destination Home to do a convening with all of our nonprofits that are providing support in this area. And that's allowed us to expand a program with the YWCA that will be working next with Community Solutions and Next Door to expand the availability of housing for victims of domestic violence. Second, something we're doing now, but that we need to do more of, is that as we're building affordable housing, that we need to make sure that we're building housing with multiple bedrooms, so that we're actually building family housing and not just single room occupancy. And we're doing that as well. And lastly, I think one of the most important opportunities we have is something we're working on right now, which is getting homeless families off the street today. And we kicked off a program earlier this year that's allowed us to house almost 300 homeless families, and we need to be more aggressive on that.
Thank you, Supervisor. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. I think that we need an all of the above strategy on increasing housing supply where we want it. And by all of the above, I mean that we have a mismatch of supply and demand. We have to build many more units, including market rate units, by reforming our planning, building, and code enforcement department to better facilitate investment in San Jose. And I really hope regionally, because we can't solve this problem alone. By adding that capacity, we'll take a lot of pressure off of the market and create more options and affordability for everyone. Of course, we also need to do everything we can to deploy the resources at our disposal, including our Measure E dollars, to target affordable housing at different income levels. And for those who are most vulnerable, in fact, in my own district, we've identified a site for building a bridge housing site that will be one of the largest in the county. And one of the discussions we've been having is whether or not we can special purpose it for victims of domestic violence and just create more of that bridge capacity for people who are falling into very dangerous situations and need their own space. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you. One of the main reasons why victims of domestic violence or intimate partner violence do not leave that situation is because they really have nowhere else to go, especially in an emergency. And we know that the issue of a lack of affordable housing or emergency shelter options is a challenge that we have around our entire community. But when we break that challenge up, and we've done so successfully in the past in areas and segments that are achievable to create success, we've seen that success, like with helping to end veterans homelessness, in creating the first LGBTQ space emergency shelter, actually, which I was able to help lead on and create here in my district, in District 3 in downtown San Jose. We need to do the same as we have realized now the crisis that we have with intimate partner violence, and really a lack of emergency shelter and locations for these individuals to go when they need to get out of that situation immediately. Additionally, we know absolutely we need to have more of these solutions up and down, whether it's from emergency shelter to permanent housing.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our fourth question. What actions would you take as mayor to attract and support business, especially small business, for the city? Up first with that question is Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you very much for the question. I think one of the most important opportunities that we have is to make it easy for people to do business with the city. For example, we used to have a program where you could get all of your permits over the counter, not necessarily having to come in over the counter, but for improvements to a building, being able to do that online. That's one example. The other is something we're doing at the county, which is creating small business loans and making them available to folks who've been impacted, for example, by COVID-19. And I think the third, and probably one of the most important, is let folks know that we're open for business and giving people the help they need to get through processes. Some of them are so complicated that it makes it very difficult, and people don't feel really welcome to even come to San Jose, let alone the county in general. And actually, if I have a little bit more time, I'll add one other thing. I think we ought to be recruiting businesses, not just as a single city, but looking at these as regional opportunities, so that if somebody's not going to come here, maybe they'll go to Morgan Hill or Gilroy. It's good for our entire community.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks for the question. I spend a lot of time chatting with our local small business owners, and the number one thing they tell me that impacts their business is the feeling that the neighborhoods they're in are not safe and clean. And I think that the single best thing we can do is invest in our infrastructure, help our homeless neighbors transition out of our streets and into shelter and treatment, and really create environments in commercial zones where people want to spend time and walk around and eat outside and otherwise patronize our local businesses. I hear over and over again, safe and clean is the number one priority of all of our small businesses. I'll also just add that back to land use, we need to build a lot more housing, and we should be building it densely near transit corridors and major commercial districts, so that that built-in patronage, those customers are living just upstairs from or down the block from those local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually heard slightly different from our small business community here in San Jose over the last 7 years. And it's actually been the delay, the time that it takes to be able to work through the city permitting and processes in order to be able to just do what they want to do in their business and to operate successfully. And that time and those delays, sometimes months and months, is really, really costly, especially when you're talking about smaller businesses and ultimately at times putting them out of business and making it impossible for them to be able to operate here in the city of San Jose. And unfortunately, one of the other challenges is it has not been equitable. We have seen if you are a big business and you have the ability to pay to expedite or speed up your process, that you can do so here in the city of San Jose. We need to make that much more fair. And that was one of the reasons why I helped to lead and create our Office of Racial Equity in the city, to be able to create more of a fair process, including for small businesses like this, to be able to navigate through the city processes.
Thank you. And Jonathan.
Thank you. We need to make San Jose the best place to live, work, start a business, and raise a family. And I think it's very important that we address the central issue here in regards to small businesses and bringing them here and really what's preventing their growth. And it's that business is fast, but government is slow. Business is fast, but government is slow. So we need government to keep up with the pace of business. If this means expanding hours in regards to processing payment permits, we need to do that. Permitting is very slow and it can restrict the growth of the company. So I think that's important, but also ensuring that we have a coaching mechanism for small business owners, people that want to start a business, but don't quite know how to do that, ensuring that they have a city that's very supportive of them and making sure that we do have a digital portal that's available for them to use. I also think that we need an ad campaign to promote the small businesses that exist within our city. They're the backbone of our community and they are the attraction of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Right, we are now moving on to our fifth question, which centers around the hot topic of affordable housing, which has been touched on a little bit already. As mayor, what are 2 specific actions you will take in your first 6 months to increase supply of affordable housing? And up first is Councilmember Mahar.
I think the 2 most impactful and immediate things we can do are one, something I've already mentioned, which is reforming planning, building, and code enforcement. We have very slow and convoluted processes, and we talk a lot about permitting during election time, and then we don't change it after the fact. And what I have pushed for through Smart Cities is actually identifying the exact number of days that it takes to go through different steps in the process and then tie accountability to it. So that if your permit is late and it's on us as a city, you should get your money back. There ought to be measurement and accountability to speed up the processes at planning and building. And then beyond that, I think that we need a mayor who is going to be aggressively out there recruiting dollars from both state government, from the philanthropic sector, and pulling in dollars from other places to supplement the frankly pretty small amount of dollars we have at the city level to address this problem.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you very much. First and foremost, we need to be, as a mayor, unapologetically pro-affordable housing. We cannot pretend that if we just build enough market rate housing, that will trickle down and ultimately help to create significant housing opportunities for people in our community. We know it's been the #1 factor that has driven out families from the city of San Jose. And we need to be, again, unapologetic in our leadership as mayor to ensure that we can build affordable housing and develop it all throughout our community, that there aren't communities that somehow are off limits to affordable housing or to particular people in our community. And secondly, I know what the holdup has been through our planning, building, and code enforcement, and it has been a lack of staff and a turnover of staff. We need to make sure that the staff that we have, that we are competitive in our pay and benefits for them, that we treat them and encourage them as the beneficial city asset that they are, so that way we can ensure that the work that we need them to do gets done efficiently.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Thank you for that question. Of course, affordable housing is on everybody's mind. We are the largest city in the Bay Area, and as a region, we have a critical housing shortage. But even as the largest city in the Bay Area, we have such a large suburban community, and I think that's simply unacceptable going into the future. So I think we do need to only approve denser urban housing as we move forward. That's the only way to address this. And there's going to be a lot of blockades within government to do this. But I will be a mayor that will push through those to ensure that we can meet our housing demand. But also, we need a mayor who's not going to back down and not feed in to the powerful lobbies that are preventing them from supporting and going through with SB 9. So I think we do need to support SB 9, and many candidates do not want to follow through with that state law, and I will be a mayor who will. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say that the Planning, Building, and Code Department has 25% less staff than it needs just to be baseline. And I think what Councilmember Peralez raised about making sure that we're investing in those folks, I think is critical. I think we need to make sure that we're thinking about longevity pay, that we're thinking about career ladders, so that folks, we don't just train the best and the brightest and have them leave. That's been a huge impact to us. Second, the process for getting permits needs to be so transparent that the permittee can look at where they are online, the staff can look where they are online. We can make sure people are putting in the information they need so that we know where the bottlenecks are. And finally, the state of California, up until recently, has invested very little in extremely low, very low income housing. And we need to put the pressure on the state to continue to fund that so we can continue to build it and do it at record speeds.
Thank you, Supervisor. And we are now going into our final prepared question, which centers around transit. As mayor, what is the single most important thing for you to accomplish to increase the use of mass transit, and how will you accomplish it? Again, since I fumbled a bit on my words, as mayor, what is the single most important thing for you to accomplish to increase the use of mass transit, and how will you accomplish it? Up first is Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, and it is a bit of a moonshot, but I think we need to make public transit free and accessible to as many people as possible, starting with our very low income and community members and our students in the city of San Jose here. Having been on the Valley Transportation Authority board now going on my 8th year, I have seen the very low fare box recovery that our agency operates off of. And it is so minimal that we need to be able to find a way to subsidize and create opportunities for more people to use transit. It should not be a hurdle, the cost of using transit for our communities, again, especially for our low income community members and those that depend on transit. We need to make that free and accessible to them.
Thank you, Councilmember. Jonathan.
Thank you for that question. Growing up, I only had the opportunity to commute by bus. I know how it feels to catch numerous buses and have to take numerous transfers just to get to your destination, whether that's school or work. It's painful. It takes a lot of days or hours out of your day. And that's sometimes just going one way. Repeating the process and going home, it's very tedious. So I think, one, I hear it from a lot of residents. They want answers. They want to know, when can we move forward with BART expansion to Central San Jose? I think that's very important. That's a very important system that we have. And I think ensuring that we expand BART closer to downtown is going to be very important. Also, I think addressing that and minimizing that last mile transit, right? So that's from your current location to the bus stop. That is called last mile. We want to reduce that. And I think a good way that we can do that is by introducing robo-taxis. I think robo-taxis, of course, is another moonshot idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we need to focus on making sure that transit is fast, affordable, convenient, and safe. And we really need to focus on the backbone and making sure that we're connecting that backbone both to BART and to Caltrain along that, our main corridor. And then the other is, I think we need to do a better job of working with the community and working with our employers so that we're making transit truly convenient and responsive to where people live and where they work. And finally, we need to make sure that we continue to build out. We've had a long history of focusing on building densely around transit stops. And we need to remember that we both need to build housing and jobs along those transit stops so that it's really something that makes it easy for people to access and use. If I have one more minute, I'll say that coordinating between BART, light rail, buses, and Caltrain so that the timing really works for the people who are trying to ride. And that last mile is going to be important for us to focus on as well.
Thank you. And Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. I've relied on transit for much of my life to get where I need to go. In fact, I first came to San Jose as a work-study scholarship student, high school here, 4 hours a day round trip by bus over Highway 17 all the way from Watsonville. And I'm a big believer in buses. I think to the extent possible, we should be doubling down on flexible, cost-effective, high-frequency bus service that can move a lot more people to all the places they need to go. The biggest barrier to transit use is not the cost, although that's relevant. It's the frequency, it's the speed, does it get you where you need to go? And does it get you there quickly and efficiently? And while I'm very excited that we've got some big fixed rail projects like BART coming to San Jose over the next decade or so, I think really doubling down on bus routes is the single biggest thing we can do to increase ridership and serve our community, particularly our low income community. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes the prepared questions that we had. As we noted at the beginning, we would now have an opportunity for a couple of attendee questions. So I will ask that if you have a question that has not been touched on yet, if you could please use the raise hand function, and we will go ahead and call on folks in the order in which we see them in the queue. I would also just like to comment two other items. One is, when you ask your question, you have a maximum of 30 seconds. We want to ensure that, that the candidates are the focus, so please only 30 seconds. The second point I would like to make is if you have a question for a specific candidate, you are allowed to ask that question, but please note that we will give every other candidate the opportunity to answer that question as it relates to them specifically. Candidates, again, will have 1 minute to answer the questions. The first hand that I saw raised was Sean. Do you have the ability to unmute yourself?
Good evening. 7 fire officials from 6 local fire districts made a public post. They made a public statement with the help of the San Lorenzo Valley Post. They're complaining that some of their tools for fighting our wildfires is in danger of being taken from them. Access to mountain roads and mountain rail. They need rail to be able to haul water and suppressant and equipment. What can you do to what will you do to help meet their needs? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and we will continue doing the same answering process to make it fair. So up next, so up to answer first is Jonathan.
Thank you for your question, Sean. So if I understand correctly, fire officials do not have access to the equipment that would allow them to fight these fires. It sounds like there is some sort of blockade as far as their access to roads and things of that sort. And Sean, I do believe we have met at a town hall that I did hold, and at some of those events, I do get to learn a lot from people. And so I think one thing that hasn't been raised is, the issues that are occurring with our rail system. A lot of corporations that are really restricting residents as well as fire officials access to critical parts of land. So I think I need to understand your question a little bit more to be able to address it properly. So I do apologize. That wasn't sufficient enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Up next, we have Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you for the question, Sean. I missed a little bit of it too, but I do want to, I think I can respond to part of it. And that is that, you know, one thing that we need to remember with our firefighting is that we really rely on mutual aid when we're fighting big fires. And so a couple things that I would just say. One, I think that fire departments could be more collaborative in terms of what kinds of equipment we bought, and therefore what kinds of equipment were available to be shared. The second is that we need to do more collective and collaborative work on fire suppression. And what that may mean is that really relying on different departments to work together to be able to clear brush and do the other kind of big picture fire suppression that we've been thinking about and working on. And then lastly, you know, one area that I think as we think about fire long term is that there's a lot of new technology that we're not accessing, in part because of the cost. So working together, I think we could do more.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Sean. I also would like more context, and I'd say it's maybe more of a process answer. I would want to sit down and better understand the concerns and trade-offs. I know you were talking about fighting wildfires out, and it sounded like the Santa Cruz Mountains, which is a little beyond, you know, what we often are dealing with in kind of the urban firefighting environment. But certainly we have a lot of wild land interface, and it's important. I'd like to better understand what the resource constraints are. I do think, at least for the city of San Jose, better in investing in brush clearing and fire suppression along the edges of the city. I represent a district that has significant fire risk down in the Almaden Valley, is something that's really important, and we've got to partner with other agencies to make happen to protect our community. But would love to learn more of the specifics of the concerns that you were raising. Thanks for the question.
Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll echo, it sounds like maybe we all need just a slight bit more understanding of the direct concern that you had. What I heard sounded like it was the tools as far as access, whether it was roads or rail lines that can transport the tools that you may need in fighting these fires. And I will just say that, as we know, all the surrounding ranges around San Jose pose a fire risk to our residents here. And certainly that suburban and urban interface that we have here on the borders of San Jose is an area of concern. And we do deploy mutual aid, both back and forth, to be able to support one another. And it is extremely important that not only are we there to support one another, but that we are aware, like what you're bringing up today, of maybe some of the concerns that we're not aware of today, so that way we can be better advocates as leaders of the city.
Thank you. All right, we have a question, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. Is it Javid? You can unmute yourself, and just a reminder, you have 30 seconds to answer to ask your question. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Javed Elahi, I'm Mayor of Montecito. Thank you for giving me the chance. My question has to do with the state coming in and taking over control over city councils, as far as trying to tell them whether they can zone or not zone and how much zoning could be done. I know there's a huge need for housing, but I think city councils themselves are in better position to decide what housing to put where. The housing requirement, for example, cities that really don't have any empty spaces, it only will end up with developers getting rich. The houses that are going to be built are going to be $1 million homes anyway. Wouldn't it be better if these cities work together and the city can subsidize another city which needs housing and has the land, and build housing that can be affordable for everybody else? There's an initiative going around to take back the state's control. How do you feel about that initiative?
Thank you for the question. Can we make sure everyone is muted before? Great, thank you. Supervisor Chavez, you're up first.
Thank you. Let me say that, Mayor, that one of the initiatives that we had about 4 or 5 years ago that actually Vice Mayor Chappie Jones was leading was through the Cities Association to come to a shared agreement about how we could divide up the RENA numbers and whether or not we could get cities that had less land interested in making investments in cities that were building more housing. And we actually couldn't get agreement on it. So the challenge is that we need to do much, much more work to build out that collaborative opportunity in our region. As it relates to the new initiative that's come forward in response to SB 9, I think it's incredibly dangerous. It could impact fire life safety, how we address water availability, and the collaboration between cities. So I think that while some may be unhappy with SB 9, the resulting referendum could be incredibly dangerous to the health of our communities.
Thank you, Supervisor. Up next, we have Councilmember Mahar.
You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. I was muted. Sorry. Thank you for the question. I oppose SB 9 and the overriding of local control because it doesn't take into account any of the local circumstances, infrastructure, traffic congestion, fire risk, so many other. Sorry, if folks would mute themselves, I'd appreciate it. I think there's a smarter way. You're pointing to one innovative solution. We absolutely need to build more housing, but we need to be equitable in how we do it. We need to be denser, transit oriented. I think that it's right for the state to set housing production targets and to create carrots and sticks, but not all cities have the exact same circumstances or capacity. And so we need more nuance. I think goals should be set with incentives, and then cities should have more flexibility about how they hit the goals rather than simply overriding local zoning, which actually does take into account things like infrastructure, fire risk, et cetera. So I appreciate the question, and thank you.
Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for the question. And I would agree. Actually, for a number of years now, I have been supportive of that concept of other cities in our region here, potentially, if they are unable to build the housing necessary, in them being able to help fund that development in other cities. But as Supervisor Chavez pointed out, that was not a very popular idea amongst the Cities Association, and I don't think it would generate enough support, at least not today. And I don't think that policies like SB 9 are an overreach on cities themselves. I also think that policies like SB 9 are not going to make a dramatic increase in the amount of affordable housing or housing stock that we see. I think they are one tool in the toolbox. I am proud to continually be in support of policies like that that will help us to smartly grow and densify in areas that have been exclusive to just single family homeowners, and would continue to support that.
And Jonathan.
I can't quite seem to find him. I'm not sure if he dropped off the call.
Let's take a look. Technology is a good time. I think he may have accidentally dropped off the call. So if he pops back in, we can bring him back into the fold. And in the meantime, we'll continue. And for our final question from the audience, we have Kylie.
Hi, thank you so much to all of you for being here. I have a question that's directed towards Supervisor Chavez. The city of San Jose hasn't had a female mayor in 24 years. Why do you think this matters? And what do you think would be different about your leadership as mayor?
Kylie, thank you so much for the question. And, I had an opportunity to work with Mayor Hammer. And let me just say what I learned from her that I hope I've imitated in my own work. And that is that she was deeply collaborative. She really listened to the broadest part of the community and really tried to engage them.
Supervisor, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. Can everyone please make sure they're muted? We can't hear the supervisor. Thank you. I apologize for the interruption.
Thanks, Diana.
Can we reset her time?
And one of the things that I've learned is that, that collaboration is not a soft skill. It takes a lot of work. And, really during COVID-19, I really called on that work to be able to pull people together and get them focused and working together. I'll just close with one other thought, and that is that as we think about the future of this community, who represents it and how that representation happens is so critical to what young people think they can do in the future. And if you look at, our Vice President, Kamala Harris, you just see young people all over the country saying, I can do that. I can be her. And I think we're going to see many, many more in the pipeline because of it.
Really quick, apologies for the interruption. It seems as if he was kicked off and cannot rejoin. So I'm going to try calling him to see if he can participate through my phone.
Okay.
So I will do that while you continue.
Great, thank you. So as I noted at the beginning of the attendee question, if there was a question for one particular candidate, we were going to open it and allow the other candidates to also respond. It is not mandatory, but this is the opportunity for the other candidates that are currently on if they would also like to address the question that Kylie brought forward.
Is there an order or?
Yes, Councilmember Peralez, I believe it was your voice that I heard.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you for the question. Look, I absolutely agree. I'm not a woman, obviously. I absolutely agree that we need to have diverse leadership throughout our city. And similarly, when you look back at in other factors like the lack of Latino leadership or minority leaders that have led in our city, I think that those are very, very important as well. And we should be striving to have that level of diversity in leadership, especially in the office of mayor. I know we have another well-qualified woman candidate in this race. She's not a Democrat, and so she's not here with us today, but I'm proud to have colleagues like this that I think are well-qualified and really would be tremendous leaders in our city, and proud to be in a competition like this.
Thank you. Jonathan, I see you're back, and just to bring you up to speed, a attendee was referencing the fact that we have not had a female mayor in an extremely long time, sort of what the impact of that might be. Councilmember Chavez has answered, Supervisor Chavez has answered, Councilmember Peralez commented as well. So if either you or Councilmember Mahan would like to address that, this is the venue to do it, but it's not mandatory.
Oh, absolutely. If I could just have a moment. Yes, I think it's great that we have great female leaders really throughout our state, throughout our community, and also in this race. I think San Jose definitely needs some female leadership. I have a lot of volunteers, supporters who are great women themselves, who support my campaign, and I very much look to them for guidance. And I think a lot of what they believe is reflected in my candidacy, even though I'm not a female myself. I definitely, I'm very encouraged by the many great ladies who are in this race, and how that might reflect on young women today who also aspire to run for office. But if I also may go back to a question that I believe I missed because I was spunked from the call, just really quickly, I think City Council definitely has the opportunity and the power to supersede what the state puts before us, but I do still strongly support SB 9. I think we got to do everything we can to bump up our housing inventory. And I think SB 9 is one technique of which we can do that. It's not the end all be all, but it's one thing that we can do. So to answer the gentleman's question, I think there are many things as mayor that I would, I think, sidestep the guidance of the state or state law. But as far as SB 9 is concerned, I do strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you for succinctly answering both questions. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for raising the topic of diversity and representation. San Jose has a proud history as the former feminist capital of the country. And I have a lot of respect for my colleagues, Supervisor Chavez and Councilmember Davis, who are running. I think they bring different set of experiences and perspectives that enriches the debate. And I know they both would be very, would do a great job serving, have done a great job serving and representing the community. And I think that sort of value of representation extends to many other areas, including the fact that as a city that's nearly 40% Asian American, I think it is a real lack or deficit for our city to have no Asian American representation on the council. And so I think we have to think about that in kind of all of its dimensions and advocate for it. I think the element of diversity I bring to the race is working in the private sector, as do about 80% of our residents. And so I think we all bring something different to the table. And I think that's what makes our community such a great place. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now at the point where we're going to give each candidate 1 minute for a closing. Again, I will go back to the format that we were doing, where we were going one at a time and rotating through. So based on that, up next, we would have Councilmember Mahar giving his closing for 1 minute.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this evening. I think the 60-second format can make it a little difficult to go deep on the issues, but what I want to leave you with is that I think we have to change the operating system at City Hall. I think we have to operate differently. Having built a couple of successful software startups in the civic tech space that were all about increasing participation in civic life, increasing transparency and accountability. That's the different perspective that I'm bringing to this race. We all have something different to offer. And in this moment, when most San Joseans feel that we're on the wrong track on issues like homelessness and the look and feel of the city and affordability, I think we've got to be able to be radically more focused, pragmatic, innovative, and accountable for results. And I think that bringing in that new perspective, someone who hasn't come up with all the reasons for why things are the way that they are and is willing to look at these problems from a new angle, is what our city needs right now. And I appreciate the opportunity to share a few ideas with you this evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, council member. Next, we have council member Peralez.
Yeah, thank you. I think we need a true collaborator and a dedicated public servant to be able to lead our city through the next few years. I have called this city home my entire life, and I've dedicated my life to public service, starting off as a school teacher here in Santa Clara County, teaching in alternative ed at community day schools, the Boys Ranch, and Juvenile Hall. I went on to be an emergency medical technician and then a police officer here serving our community, and ended up being the only police officer in our county's history to also serve as an officer and substitute teach in Juvenile Hall. I have dedicated my life to public service, and these last 7 years have dedicated it to help lead on the San Jose City Council. I've seen the power and the influence that a mayor can have in leading over our city. And to me, it's deeply personal, and I want to be able to help lead our city in a way where all of us can benefit. And thank you again for the opportunity to join you tonight. And in this discussion, I'd be honored to have your support.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you all for your time and consideration. Again, I'm Jonathan Estaban, the only working class candidate in this race for mayor of San Jose. I'm very proud of that fact. I'm not a career politician. I don't seek to be a career politician. I seek to be a public servant. I've always been a volunteer. I've always looked to better my community. And I think as mayor, I will lead a very productive city council. And I think that is what residents want the most. They want a productive city council so that we can really make San Jose the best city to live, work, start a business, and to raise a family. And we do that by investing in our schools, in cleaner roads, as well as ensuring that we do have public safety. And that all provides a better quality of, that's what people want in San Jose. They want a better quality of life. And I'm proud to be in the running so that I can bring that to voters this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, also, sorry, I know, just really quickly, more information at voteforesteban.com. Thank you.
Thank you. And Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. And I really want to thank you for spending time away from your families to engage in the mayor's race. You know, I'm running for mayor because I've demonstrated that genuine leadership really can save lives. We can improve health, build affordable housing, keep families safe, and stand tall for justice. And I want to bring that leadership to the city that I love, the city where Mike and I have raised our son, a city that really has been, for so many of us, just a window. An opportunity for us to live our best lives. I believe that most of the folks on this call share a vision that San Jose can be a place where we respect one another and still keep our neighborhoods safe, where we can care for the homeless and maintain attractive parks and trails and open space, and where we can treat essential workers with respect and have a strong, growing economy. I would be honored to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the forum. I would like to thank all of the candidates for taking the time and spending an hour with us today, giving us very thoughtful responses. And dare I say that this is a group that actually met the 60-second mark virtually every time. So that alone is a massive mark of success based on the experiences I have. So thank you for being conscious of that. Thank you for giving us answers that were thoughtful, and thank you for spending the time with us. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you. And I would now like to pass this on to Jenny so that they can get on to the business of the club.
All right, and thank you, Diana. That was a fantastic job moderating. We're really grateful to have you here with us. So
My pleasure.
Yeah, and so I am the Silicon Valley Democratic Club president. Our bylaws state that in order for a candidate to be endorsed, they must receive 60% of the vote of members in good standing. We are going to hold the vote by using a very simple Google form. The ability to update your membership in order to vote for this meeting closed at the beginning of the meeting. And we ask that when you fill out the Google form, make sure you use the email address that you used when you originally registered. We will do our best to count every vote and not hold any technical difficulties against everyone. So don't worry, we will listen if you are having any problems and do our best to make sure that that is not an issue. But if you use the same email, that'll make it easier for us to count the votes. So shortly, I will be putting the Google form in the chat. We will have the first round of voting for all 4 candidates. If one candidate receives 60% of the vote, they will receive the club's endorsement. If no single candidate receives 60% of the vote, we will have a second round of voting with just the top 2 vote getters, which means we're asking everyone to hang in there with us while we do the vote counting in case there is a second round. So if you can please just stay on the line and have some patience while we count votes, we greatly appreciate it. So I'll go ahead and post the form. We're going to have the form open for 5 minutes. So the Google form is now in the chat. And if you have any issues accessing it, please let us know. All right, voting is now closed. We've had a couple questions about household memberships. If you have a household member that is on the call and wasn't sure about how to fill out the form, given that they're using your email, please message me privately in the chat. And we're going to go ahead and start counting the votes. So I'll hand it over to Allie.
All right, while we are waiting for the votes to be tallied, please enjoy a video of one of my favorite animals, the red panda.
So bright. Whoops. Crazy thing. The last grade. That's a good girl. What a good girl, Nene. The last grade. That's a good girl. Just get that. Good girl. Any questions? Got it? You're so bright.
All right, we have finished counting the votes. And we're pleased to announce that the Silicon Valley Democratic Club endorses Supervisor Cindy Chavez, who received over 85% of the vote. So thank you to all the candidates for participating, and congratulations, Supervisor Chavez.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I'm sorry for the echoing. We've got another computer on, but thank you, thank you, thank you. This is going to be a great race. I am so excited I get to do this with all of you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Allie to close us out.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I think we all had a really lively debate that we got to watch. Congratulations, Supervisor Chavez, for getting the endorsement tonight. And if you enjoyed a little bit of tonight between the great questions and the videos of really great animals, then please join us again next month on March 21st at 7 p.m. and we will be considering some other races for endorsement. Stay tuned to our emails and we look forward to having you back. Thank you so much and have a good night, everyone. Oh, and actually one final note, thank you to our moderator, Diana. That was some of the best moderation I've ever seen in my entire life. Huge thanks to all of our e-board for making tonight happen. A big thanks to our president, Jenny, and of course, thank you so much for the candidates for your time. Now, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night to you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Night, everybody. Good to see you all.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
Great
Allie.
meeting.
Let's thank Allie too for doing such a fantastic job running the meeting. Thank you.
Great job, everyone.
Yeah,
And for queuing up the red panda videos too.
that was
amazing.
great.
The panda was amazing. And thank you, Leslie and Jenny, for counting the votes.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.